Hey everyone, it's Michael GoosebumpsFan. I hope you're doing well today. It feels good to be able to talk to you guys, start up a video saying that. It's been a while, even though I'm making videos on other channels. I haven't talked to you all in a while, and well, I hope you're doing okay. I hope you had a great Christmas. I hope you have a wonderful new year in 2025. And as many of you know, the new TV season of Goosebumps from Disney Plus, Hulu, whatever you want to say, it finally came out 2 days ago. And I've watched it all 8 episodes. And many of you know, kind of from the get-go, I had no hope for this season. A lot of people were asking me why I didn't talk about the trailer when it came out, and I think all of you knew the answer. I hated Season 1. I reviewed every episode because at the time they were coming out semi-weekly at that point. But Season 2, Goosebumps The Vanishing, that's now out, the one I'm talking about right here, got every episode, all 8, dropped in one whole day on Friday. Now, for me, this is the thing. I had no hope, as I said. Told everybody this is going to suck. I have no reason to believe it'll be good after how awful Season 1 was back in 2023's end of the year. It was a surprisingly, shockingly bad show. I was in the middle of a move when it came out. Many of you know I was already in a bad mood because of that, but trying to juggle different channels, trying to juggle my regular job. My wife could tell I was miserable watching Season 1 of that show with how bad and stressful everything else was. That just kind of made things worse, as many of you know. And I didn't even watch the trailer, actually. For anybody who doesn't know, I never even bothered watching the trailer for Season 2 because I just didn't care. I had no reason to care after what Season 1 was like, and after a lot of the negative interaction I had with that first Season 2. Had weird people on YouTube and Reddit and stuff trying to cancel me over that awful, terrible TV show. Probably a bunch of middle schoolers or something. Anyway, point is, Goosebumps The Vanishing came out, and now I'm going to talk about it briefly. I'm not going to delve too much into spoilers. Going to keep it kind of vague, but talk a little bit more in depth about characters more than anything. And I got to be honest with you up front, I really was surprised. Did I get you? I told my wife I was going to try to get you all with that. Goosebumps The Vanishing very much surprised me. I'm not going to go out and say immediately it's a massive recommendation or anything, but this is such a big improvement over Season 1 in so many ways. That doesn't mean this one isn't flawed. It's heavily flawed, don't get me wrong. But a lot of my problems that I had with Season 1, there was a lot of things I complained about in all 10 episode reviews I did. I'm not going to do episode by episode on this season. I don't need to because everything came out in one go. And so, no joke, Friday night when it released, I came home early from work because we had a big snowstorm here in Virginia, or at least my part of Virginia got hit with it pretty bad. I left work early, I got home, had some dinner with my wife, and then I sat down while she read a book and I watched, no joke, the first 5 episodes of the 8 episodes. And I could not believe in the first 2 episodes that I watched how engaged I was. And it wasn't just because it was Goosebumps. It was actually, to me, and to my surprise compared to everybody else in the community's reviews of episode 1 and 2, I found those to be some of the highlights of the season, to be honest with you, as an introduction to these new characters, since we have a brand new cast. Kind of the general setup you get for a new series or anything, even though this is a Season 2, it technically counts as a brand new series, in my opinion. The Vanishing had no business being as good as it sometimes was. This show is not really great or anything. I would almost argue it's not really good either, objectively, not subjectively. If you liked it, I want you to know I'm very happy for you, even as much as I tease a lot of you for liking Season 1. If you liked it, that's fine, whatever. But objectively, you can't argue Season 1 is good. Season 2, you can't argue is objectively good. But I could see a lot more people liking Season 2. I really could. So if you were waiting for my opinion for whatever reason, or one of the other people in the community's reviews, I saw Goosebumps Completionist and BD Horror have been putting up reviews for the stuff lately. Go check out their channels, really good reviewers as well. BD's new channel, well I guess it's the same channel, but he renamed it to Horror Lander, in case you guys didn't know. Great guys, great reviewers, recommend them highly. But I've noticed they've all been putting out reviews. I've listened to a lot of their stuff, not everything, but a lot of it. And I gotta tell you, it surprises me, again, that people are as positive as I am about the show so far. And again, this is not really a great show at all, or even good for that matter. But we're on the right footing to go in the right direction, you know what I mean? This is more of a sci-fi season than it is like a straight-out horror series, but in the Goosebumps kind of sci-fi in our world type of thing, not futuristic sci-fi or anything like that, in case you don't know going in. But the biggest thing they've referenced here for this show is Stay Out of the Basement, and it kind of ties to a bunch of other things. I guess I'll talk about some of those other monsters. I might want to bring up some of the episodes here so I can give you a general consensus on that. Let's see, we have Stay Out of the Basement is very much the main driving concept of this story, at least at first. Then you have the haunted car in here, which was kind of neat how they did a lot of that. Even though it was an older car, it wasn't like a Porsche or a Ferrari or Christine for that matter, which Stein stole the idea from anyway from Stephen King. You had monster blood in here, which was probably the worst thing in the whole season, easily for me. The boy who cried monster, obviously from The Girl Who Cried Monster. This doesn't really matter. The girl next door, you know, about the girl in the haunted house, seeing the black shadowy spirit thing. It's not enough in here for me to justify calling an episode that, but it's here in case you're interested. Welcome to Camp Nightmare was the next to last episode title, and that really doesn't count either. It's not like they go to a camp in the middle of nowhere, just in case you're curious, but there's that. There is no saber monster, so you might as well know that ahead of time too, just letting you know. And then the final episode is just called like episode number 2.8 or something like that. Episode 8, I think some people are referring to it. The title seems to jump around everywhere, but they don't have an actual title for it. It's just the finale, basically. So, I guess I'll start with the concept here. Basically, Dr. Brewer, played by David Schwimmer, I think is his name. Is it David Schwimmer? Pretty sure. Played Ross from Friends, the old TV show with Jennifer Aniston that I like a whole lot. And he's here, haven't seen him in anything in a long time, and he seemed to have said a lot that he was excited for this show because he's never gotten to do horror before. And I love horror, many of you know that, so I was kind of curious, what is he going to bring to this? Frankly, out of the adult characters we've had in the 2 seasons that we've had of this show, he's the best one. I don't think there's any arguing. He's the best, most charming one, just like he was in Friends. Not as the best character there. Ross is an awful character from season 3 onward. I still maintain that. But he's good here. He plays Dr. Brewer, you know, the dad from Stay Out of the Basement with the plants and whatnot. And just like in that story, he's a botanist. In his basement, he has plants and whatnot that he messes around with in a little bit of a scientific way, more sci-fi than in the original book, just letting you know ahead of time. And his 2 kids, Devin and Cece, who are twins, come to stay with him. And by the way, the son, Devin, is played by Sam McCarthy, who is Andrew McCarthy, the famous 80s actor. It's his son. And I was like, I know this guy looks familiar to me. It's him. It's Andrew McCarthy's kid. And I love Andrew McCarthy. One of my favorite, like, top 10 actors of all time. Up there with, like, Stallone and Denzel Washington, Jake Gyllenhaal, Jimmy Stewart for me. Love that guy. And I couldn't believe it. His kid reminds me so much of him in here. It's so bizarre. Anyway, they come to stay with their dad because there's a problem with their aunt and some kind of health issue. I forgot what it was. Again, you got to remember, I watched like 5 episodes back-to-back and then watched 3 back-to-back on Saturday, yesterday. So anyway, they come to stay with their dad for a little bit, and it seems like, from what I can pick up, it's been a little while, but Dr. Brewer is a man who is excited to be with his kids again. And how often do you even see that in movies and shows anymore? Not very often. So I was a little like, whoa, we're making a good, responsible father figure for a story? Whoa, that was bizarre, man. David Schwimmer gets the kind of writing and humor for this season that Justin Long deserved in season 1 and did not get. And I still feel bad for Justin Long because there are newcomers to Goosebumps and newcomers to horror that may not even know who Justin Long is yet, from Jeepers Creepers to Tusk, for that matter. He's the best part of Tusk, aside from Michael Parks. Justin Long probably lost a lot of newcomer fans because of that first terrible season of Goosebumps. This season, David Schwimmer probably earned some new fans who don't even know who he is. But yeah, great adult character. There's another adult character in here who's the mom of one of the girls. Her name is Alex. The mom's name, I don't even remember because I was way too distracted. She is so sexy. She is a Latina, and she is fine, dude. She's a cop, so that made her even better. But anyway, David Schwimmer's bonding with his two twins, excuse me. It's like midday right now, which means I'm exhausted already. He's bonding with his kids. He tells them, hey, please stay out of the basement. That's the only thing I ask. I also bought you a taser because we're in Brooklyn. The entire season takes place in Brooklyn, by the way. Apparently, back in the day, he had a brother who went missing but probably actually died. His name was Maddie. David Schwimmer's character, I mean, had a brother that died or went missing. And his mom is now in a home for dementia patients as an elderly woman, and she still seems to think Maddie might still be alive. David Schwimmer's pretty sure that's not the case. Now, what I really love is that this show still has filler to it in the later episodes. I would argue from episode 3 onward, they have a lot of filler in there. In the first 2 episodes, not so much, because they're not doing what the first season did of having all of these characters basically meet for the first time, at least most of them, and trying to make them be friends. You know what I mean? And they don't work together. Everybody's trying to out-snark each other because of the terrible writing based on MCU crap. And the writing in general, I still maintain, season 1 was written by ChatGPT. I don't care what anybody says. It seems very obvious to me that that was the case. Season 2 here feels like you had an actual writer's room that actually wrote characters, I think. And I think the characters mostly with these teen kids, even though I don't like that we're still in this CW teen melodrama crap, I don't think any relationship stuff at all belongs in Goosebumps because it was never there until IDW started doing the comics and now Disney started doing the show. But I think that we would have been better off to have, you know, middle grade kids, because that's what Goosebumps was for to begin with. Teenagers don't care about Goosebumps. They're not watching this unless they were already a fan as kids, you know what I mean? So the show is already kind of picking up on some bad habits already, is what I guess I would describe it as. But the whole, in first season, everybody trying to out-snark and be more smart alecky, I guess, than the other person beside them consistently, and there's no way any of these people would be friends because of how rude they are to each other all the time, how condescending they are to each other all the time. People don't like other people that act like that. In real life, if you knew any of those characters from season 1, except for maybe Miles, who was kind of friendly and likable, and maybe, what was his name, Zach or Isaiah? I can't remember his name. They're about the only 2 characters you could kind of like. Everybody else was just rude. I mean, rude, awful people in the first season. And again, it wasn't the actors' faults. It was the terrible ChatGPT writing in Disney, I would say. Season 2, however, they don't waste a bunch of time on trying to force these kids to be friends for TV. These people, these teenagers, all sort of knew each other as kids. They all kind of grew up in the same neighborhood. For example, there's one guy that grew up across the street from David Schwimmer's house, Dr. Brewer. I guess I'll keep calling him instead of David Schwimmer in case anybody doesn't know who that is. There's a guy across the street that grows up there. So he knows Dr. Brewer fairly well, I would say. They kind of have like a frenemies thing going on. And all of that stuff really worked. But like the teenagers kind of have this feel like they all knew each other once upon a time. There's a lot of really fun, enjoyable lines and jokes in here. They didn't fill it with a lot of cringe, like, sexual humor. They didn't throw it into, like, a whole bunch of, like, random, like, mild curse words every other sentence, which I don't have any problem with cursing. Let me make that very clear to you. But I don't think it belongs in Goosebumps or really any kids' property. Even though it's still sprinkled in here, it's very rare that you have it happen in this season. And it works. It's more impactful and more funny, especially like there's a character in here named CJ, who's a delivery driver. I love CJ. He is great. I genuinely think he's funny. I like his mom when we see episodes with her in her shop that they own as a family. CJ is great. When he cusses, it's funny. I like him a lot. That actor is really good. I would like to see him go places in Hollywood in general, if Hollywood survives the fires, you know what I mean? And God bless those people, by the way. So, I'm trying to be careful about what I tell you too much. There's a possibility there's some kind of alien involvement in this, potentially, because the teenagers discover something that was potentially the thing that killed Devin and Cece's uncle years and years ago in 1994 when the show opens up with a prologue of a bunch of kids discovering a tunnel underground. I don't want to tell you too much of where that is or what it is as a location. That was kind of cool to find out a little bit of, but kind of disappointing too. This feels like a generic teen CW adaptation of what they would have done with Goosebumps. But like, when I say generic, I mean like I'm typically the guy that likes most CW shows. I don't have high standards for that. I liked most of Arrow that I saw. I made it up to like season 6 and I quit. I liked the first and third season of The Flash. I liked the first season of Legends of Tomorrow. Supergirl was trash. But CW, when it was generic for CW, it was typically fine and good. You know, for me, personally, in my taste. This show has a lot of that in it, where they have, like, references here and there. Somebody might be wearing a shirt that's like a reference to, like, Bad Hair Day or something, you know what I mean? Which was kind of cool. But you don't have, like, a ton of in-your-face, like, oh, in the background, Slappy and the Haunted Mask. There's neither of those things in here, in case you're looking for something like that, or, like, more of a Tales from the Crypt type of feel with Slappy introducing an episode, ending an episode. It's not like that at all. And I'm kind of glad for that, because I wasn't crazy about that version of Slappy from Season 1 anyway, or the Haunted Mask Golem from Lord of the Rings looking thing. This season, it had some good humor in there. It had a little bit of lightheartedness in a way that wasn't obnoxious, like Season 1 tried to do, but the out-snarking each other amongst the characters made it worse and made it hurt to watch, you know? This season has a lot of episodes that are closer to 30 minutes than an hour long, and I liked that a whole lot too. That made the pacing work a little bit better. But getting back to what I was talking about earlier, from like episode 3 onward, for me, it seems like there's a lot less character development and a lot more filler. And not like boring relationship stuff. There's a little bit of that. I know that Goosebumps Completionist brought up a great point about love triangle stuff. And I hate that too. But I think it serves an okay purpose in here. You know what I have an observation about? I think that anybody writing sci-fi or like Star Wars or anything nowadays take too much from people like George R.R. Martin. You know what I mean? C. Ryan Johnson for that. The attempt to surprise the audience, kick their feet out from under them, make them land on their knees and then punch them in the nose. You know what I mean? Like, that's the kind of stuff George R.R. Martin does. That's why you don't have the final book of Game of Thrones. That's why Ryan Johnson killed Star Wars. You know what I mean? And I keep bringing it back to that to make another point over beside it. I think too many writers that are trying to do thriller, horror types of things are taking too much influence from people like Colleen Hoover. Now, I have seen one Colleen Hoover project. That is the movie If It Ends With Us, which I hated. It was awful. My wife read the book after seeing the movie. Or no, she read the book right before the movie. Hated the movie, thought the book was really bland. The things we talked about from that book and the things she informed me about to correct things to me that the movie had made mistakes with, it all sounded like the kinds of things I'm seeing in everything now for horror, whether it be straight to streaming horror or whether it's in the theater or anything like that. Too many writers in the thriller, horror, supernatural, dark fantasy, dark romance groups are taking too much from people like Colleen Hoover. You know, if you've read that stuff, any of it at all, you can kind of see where I'm coming from with this. But I think that's a big point that's not brought up enough when people talk about current day movies or shows, especially TV shows. It's a big reason why I don't like TV anymore. Newer TV shows have just gotten worse. Ever since Sons of Anarchy ended, it's like nothing has been good, for me, at least. And I don't really watch TV. I've been working through a backlog for like 2 years now of movies and shows that are way better. You know, cartoons and everything. Newer stuff, pretty bad, unless Mike Flanagan's doing it. You know what I mean? But getting back to the show here, it has this very much, to me, from what I saw in It Ends With Us, from what I heard from my wife about the book she read from Colleen Hoover, it feels like people who are more into that type of thing trying to turn Goosebumps into that. However, I think Season 2 did it okay, you know what I mean, to an extent. This season, once again, is not great. I don't even know if I'd call it good. It's very, very, very okay. It's well shot for what it's trying to do. A lot of the camera angles and stuff are interesting. You have some interesting directors here. Like, for example, there's one episode that is more of like a found footage episode based on a tape the kids find from somebody. I don't want to tell you too much about it. But they watch it on a VCR. And it's a found footage episode, which I was totally down for. They did some justice there. None of the show was scary. Let me mind to tell you that. None of this season was scary at all. It's filled with a lot of jump scares and stuff. But there is some really great body horror. But this particular found footage episode, it really got to me because it's directed by Eduardo Sanchez, who created the Blair Witch Project, who was one of the co-directors, co-creators of that. And I was shocked when the episode ended and I figured that out. It made a lot about that episode make sense, but at the same time, that episode, despite being good, felt like filler. This could have been a good 6-episode season. Instead of 8, just like how the first season could have been 5 episodes, or maybe even 4, and been a really solid TV movie, or like a, kind of like the Zack Snyder Justice League film. It's like 4 hours long, but it works as a continuous one movie. You know what I mean? The first season could have been like that. This season could have done well for 5 or 6 episodes. The pacing would have been increased that way. But it does try to give you more time based on actual characters here and doing real development. David Schwimmer's character, Dr. Brewer, gets a lot of development. I really, really enjoyed him here. There is one scene, really 2 scenes, but one was too CGI compared to the other one, of some body horror that I mentioned earlier that was actually shocking to me. I mean, it involved a sneeze, and I'm not going to tell you anything else. That scene, I have not seen anything like that in a while. And there was a movie I saw recently starring Kevin James playing a skinhead named Becky. My boy, Goosebumps Completionist, recommended this movie to me, and it was really good, by the way. It's like Home Alone, but gory. Kind of a revenge movie if you haven't seen Becky before. Very good. Recommended to you. But very bloody, just so you know. There was a scene that was very much correlated to that I swear to God I think Becky inspired for this show. And it kind of shocked me a little bit, to be honest with you. This season is kind of gross. But not like gross like season 1 was with the weird clone thing, you know? It wasn't like that. It was like its own unique type of grossness. But like in a good way, because of the body horror stuff involving the plants Dr. Brewer is messing with. And that was serviceable. If you're an adult watching this with your teenager or whatever, and you love horror, and body horror especially, this is going to be there for you. I think you're going to like that part of it, despite a lot of the show having pacing problems and too much filler and whatever. I feel like there was something else I wanted to bring up about the show. I guess I'll talk about the individual kids I wanted to mention. I guess I'll talk about Cece first. Cece is the girl twin. The actress does really okay. Not great, but okay. She doesn't have a whole lot to work with. The script is not very serviceable to her. I would actually argue that it favors Devin, the boy twin, a lot more because he has like an ex-love interest that he was into. He's seeing her for the first time. Her name is Frankie. She's Latina also. Very beautiful, very funny. I liked her and I like Devin. Devin's probably my second favorite character behind CJ, the guy that kind of becomes friends with them later on. That kind of knows him from childhood. Now, Devin has a lot to work with, and again, Sam McCarthy, really good actor here. I liked him a lot. I think he's good, you know. I could see him going on to do like a sitcom or something. He would be fun, you know. But then you have Frankie, the love interest I talked about. She's dating the guy that lives across the road from them named Trey. Trey's kind of a punk. I can't stand him. It's not the actor, it's kind of the actor, I think. I don't think they give him a lot to work with, but they specifically write Trey as a scumbag. He keeps parking his car in their driveway, which eventually becomes the haunted car and whatever. Trey's a douche. I don't like Trey at all. Frankie deserves better than that guy. And he's kind of a bully, too. You know what I mean? What would Frankie, as sweet as she is, see in that guy? She's kind of a preppier girl, but not really like that, you know? I don't know. It didn't really work for me. But she kind of has feelings for Devin, the boy twin. And there's kind of that love triangle thing that kind of develops out of there. Then you have CJ, my favorite character that I talked about, who is like a delivery driver for his mom and dad's company. And he just like will pop up in episodes and deliver food to people or give them a ride somewhere. He's kind of not fair to put in here and give him kind of a back burner storyline. I mean, it's not really even a story, you know what I mean? But he might have one of the best episodes in here having to deal with Dr. Brewer, which I really enjoyed that episode. It involved the body horror scene I talked about being kind of shocking to me. The guy playing CJ is really good here. He actually is one of these people to me. I know people don't like Kevin Hart, but he reminds me of Kevin Hart in the sense of I could see people watching season 2 and saying he's not that funny, you know? But I think he was really good. I liked him a lot, just like I like Kevin Hart a whole lot, in the same general sense of how people like hate Kevin Hart. People turned on Kevin Hart out of nowhere. It was very strange how that happened. Now, one of the girls that I talked about earlier that has the very sexy Latina mother, her name is Alex, I think is her name. I think it's like short for Alexis, I don't know. She is a lesbian character, but this is the thing. She has a thing for Cece, the girl twin, and Cece kind of has a thing for her because Alexis, Alex, whatever, is kind of like a bad girl type. But let me tell you about something really quick. This is a great example, and I've said it before, I don't think any types of relationship should be in Goosebumps, period, or maybe even children's media at all, because it's kind of boring, and kids aren't there for that. This show did kind of a better version of what season 1 did, and in my opinion, what I wish most movies and shows would do if they're going to do any kind of like gay representation at all. I really mean that. Despite not wanting any relationships in the show, if you're going to do specifically gay relationships, number one, give the characters more to do. Cece and Alex, I keep trying to call her Alexis now since I said that to you, they are not too subtle where you kind of get this idea that maybe they're gay. They kind of straight out blatantly from the get-go are introduced as having a thing to each other, but they like don't even kiss until like way later into the show, which surprised me because most shows like season 1, when they're poorly written, when you're typing in a formula to chat GPT, you're trying to force that stuff into first episode without having a good character. And despite Cece and Alex not being great characters, the show doesn't feel like it's shoving that into your throat. You know what I mean? It doesn't feel obnoxious. It's actually well done. There's a movie I saw from last year. It's a Tubi original. It's a horror film. If you haven't seen it, I highly recommend it. It's called Lowlifes. They did the same thing there. That movie, and I think even this season of the show, could unfairly be called like woke or SJW, and I call a lot of things that because a lot of things are that, even in the Goosebumps comics, for example. This show is not that. This season specifically is not that. Not like how season 1 was. It's very subtle. I'm just saying all of this because I think it's a great example of a good, even though these characters aren't great, it's a more subtle, well done, in my opinion, more organic approach to making these two characters gay for the show. Whether you want to watch it or not, it's up to you, but my whole point is, at least they did it well here for two characters that aren't even that well written to begin with. Alex, I wish they had given more character development. I can take Cece being kind of bland, you know. Alex, they really didn't give her much to do. I feel bad for the actress because I feel like she could do a little bit more, but they don't give her much to work with. Again, that's a problem with the show. It always has been. But she is like a bad kid that has a recent bad past. She's been accused of stealing and crimes and stuff. I won't go too far into that. But she is wanting to prove herself to her mom, who's a cop, the sexy cop I talked about. And she wants to prove to her mom that she's not a bad kid. Instead of just talking with her mom like an adult would, I feel like we could have done more with that even, of why won't she talk to her mom? Maybe there's a real fear there or something. We don't really delve into that enough, I think. But I think her relationship with her mom, how the mom is integrated into the season, is again very well done. It doesn't feel like the parents are in the way of the show like season 1 had them be the main driving storyline of the show. This has a little bit of that. Even the general synopsis that Goosebumps Completionist sent me from this recent magazine article that came out about the show about a week before it came out. If I told you the general concept of the show, in depth about the story, you would probably think from the get-go, you know what, this is a retelling of season 1. And you're not wrong. In formula, it is. In execution, it's not, in my opinion. At least it's a little bit different than what season 1 was. But I really preferred this, to be honest with you. I'm super dry-mouthed today, man. I don't know what it is, the snow or what. Season 2 gets what I wanted season 1 to be, despite neither being great or even good. You know what I mean? The things that I wanted to be more well done here, they are well done. One of the worst things about this season is the soundtrack. It kind of has episodes that have a little bit better for some of the music. Most of it is like Sam Carpenter and crap like that. There's one particular song from the original season that I hate. Every time I would look up like Goosebumps song or Goosebumps theme song or something, I would get this terrible rap song that was all over the first season of the show. I don't even remember who people said was the singer of that song, but it's called Goosebumps, and it's like, I get goosebumps every time, is like the general chorus of the song. It's awful. It's awful and I hate it. Season 2 doesn't have any trace of that, thank God. Even giving it the subtitle, The Vanishing, makes me think it's very clear they're trying to get away from what Season 1 did in its totality, you know? And thankfully for that. Because I don't think there was any way to recover after what happened with Season 1. It was terrible. It was terrible in every way. You had people coping all over the place trying to defend it. And look, you don't have to do that with Season 2. Season 2 is really fine. It's really, really, really okay, once again, for what it's doing. This is the kind of horror I could see being more for teenagers. It's not well crafted or anything in a heavy-handed way. It's not political, which I think is the big thing that was a positive to me. It's not obnoxious. It's just really, I wouldn't even say cozy, but it was interesting to watch, just to see what they would do. Now, when it comes to the different monsters, I think they're tied in together a little bit more in a sensical manner. It's how they do things like Monster Blood that I think Monster Blood is awful in here. The episode about that is a Cece episode, the girl twin I talked about. And man, is it boring. It's about anxiety. God, everyone and their mom and their freaking dog have diagnosed themselves with anxiety now. And the whole episode is about that. And it is so boring. Dude, no one cares that you feel any struggle about real life and challenges and the unfairness of life. Grow up. Jesus. It is so annoying. And when I found out that was the premise of the episode, dude, my eyes rolled so hard into my head that I could count every crevice of my brain. I wanted to die. But after that, everything else surrounding it, yeah, it has that middle season slump to it. Everything else around it, not half bad. And again, the first 2 episodes, I think, for me, are some of the strongest episodes, aside from the CJ episode dealing with Dr. Brewer. The finale does not land at all for me. It's a bad finale. I'm just letting you know up from the get-go. You may like it more than I did. I thought it completely failed in the finale. There's kind of like this one weird underground scientist thing that's going on. I don't want to talk too much about because it's not really that per se, but it has a little bit of this vibe of Spielberg's E.T. movie that I am just not into, like at all. And again, it was weird having a big budget Goosebumps thing that didn't have Slappy here. This is like the first time that's ever happened, you know what I mean? People don't really talk about that in their reviews either, I don't think. It was a strange season, in the sense that I didn't hate it. I'm very surprised. I told my wife for like the first half of the show, like, I'm surprised. This was not bad at all. It was not horrendously awful like Season 1. This had some really good stuff in there, mixed in with a lot of generic, boring stuff. If it didn't have so much filler, I think I and a lot of people would rate this a lot higher than I did. And I don't think I have anything else left to talk about. I'm looking at my list right here underneath the camera. I'm thinking about the stuff on IMDb, but I don't think I had anything to tell you about that I'm forgetting. But I just wish the season had been shorter, you know what I mean? I think that Rob Letterman, who directed like the first and I think final episode of the show, the producer, executive producer, all of that, I think he gets a little bit more of what people like myself were saying, but at this point, with how Season 2 was done and how everything from Season 1 was abandoned, I don't think there's any way you bots and normies out there who defended Season 1 could sit there and try to tell me that all of us who hated Season 1 were wrong and that it did so well. You're lying to yourself. You may have liked it. Subjectively, that's fine, but objectively, it seemed like it was an awful show, I would say. And it clearly did not get continued because of how hated it was and how bad the numbers were. Now, I would probably say when it comes to Goosebumps The Vanishing, if I had to rate it on a 5-star basis, it's kind of on the lower level of this, but I would give it a 3 out of 5 stars. I think it's fairly watchable for what it is, despite my lengthy, rambly review as always. But I had to do that because there was so much to talk about here. I will say, one thing that I learned in a prediction that I got wrong about Season 1 is I said they would never get a Season 2. And I was convinced on that. However, I am almost certain, despite the good things a lot of us will say about Season 2 here, because I think a lot of people seem to be receiving it fairly well, you know, because I think a lot of the things people wanted done better, like myself, it was this time, I would argue, even though it's not great, not good, it's just fine, it's really okay. I don't know how often I would rewatch this season. It's not like one of my favorite things ever. It's kind of like reading the Body Squeezers books, you know? Like if you read those from Series 2000 of Goosebumps. I don't know if I would reread those anytime soon in the next 5 years because of how they just didn't hit the spot for me. They're not really satisfying Goosebumps, you know? And this show feels like that for me. What I think I'm going to get wrong, maybe, I don't think that even in the good graces of what Season 2 has given us, And thankfully for that, for the writer's room, for the actors, everybody did a really solid job here. Personally, I think if there's going to be a season 3, they need to stick to an anthology thing. Because this season really didn't wrap up in a good way. It didn't land in a way that gave you really actually any resolution or satisfaction on anything that happened in this season. And I wanted that this time around, unlike season 1. I wanted that this season. We didn't get that. You know, it doesn't really wrap up every storyline by the end of it. So I'm assuming season 3 will really be season 2 of The Vanishing, but I also don't have pure confidence that we'll even get season 3. And what I mean by that, when I reviewed season 1, I didn't know this, but the majority of shows that get set up for streaming specifically, great example being Velma, the horrible Scooby-Doo new version of Scooby-Doo about Velma herself with Mindy Kaling, who was awful. That show, and apparently most shows for streaming, straight to streaming, are usually contracted for 2 seasons from the get-go. Velma was one, X-Men 97 was one, those are both, well no, one was HBO Max. X-Men 97 is Disney, you know? But they're typically contracted for 2 whole seasons from the get-go. That's usually what's greenlit, and it has to be really bad, like The Acolyte bad, to get canceled from the get-go and not even make it to season 2, which happened to The Acolyte. Velma already had a season 2 in the works already before season 1 ever even premiered. So you got season 1 and season 2, and then it was canceled. Goosebumps, nothing has been said yet. I think they're going to give it about a couple of months, if I had to bet. And even if the numbers are good here, I don't think it'll make up for season 1's complete failures. Maybe they'll give it another dose for another season. I don't know. Maybe they could improve it. Maybe they make it worse. I don't know. But I kind of hope if we're going to continue this series, I hope we continue season 2. But if we did a whole new 3rd season with a whole new cast and everything, I'd be fine with that too. The problem that comes in is that too often when you do that every season, it feels like hitting the reset button, and obviously it is, but you have to go through the same amount of episodes to reset things again and put us back into a friend group with too many kids there, like Goosebumps Completionist said. 5 or 6 teenagers is too much. You need like 3 or 4, and that's it. That's all you really need to make this work. But not only that, like, they need shorter seasons. They do. You don't need a whole episode dedicated to each character. That's a lie within screenplay writing in the world. You could easily take an hour-long episode and dedicate half of it to one character, half to another, and tie that up together. The Stephen King mantra of having a chapter per character, in this case an episode per character in translation, you don't need that, in my opinion. You don't. Not for an hour apiece, not for 35 or 40 minutes apiece, because these characters don't have enough going on with them, or in them for that matter, within the script, to really justify that. And God forbid, if we get a season 3 that's tied to The Vanishing, this season 2 here, what could they possibly do to expand on these characters? If they're going to do another 8 or 10 episodes of that season, I don't think there's enough there. I don't, you know? So I'm kind of leaning more towards I would like to have them just do a new cast for the 3rd season without having to run through the same wheels of problems again. Because eventually, like a lot of people have said in the Discord and whatever, this feels like it's basically Stranger Things, the TV show. But a crappier CW version, you know? But not so much this season. More of season 1 was the crappier version. This just feels kind of watered down, you know? But that's really all I have to tell you about this show. I don't think we're going to get a season 3. I just don't, because of how bad season 1 failed. Season 2, it's trying. It really is. And if you haven't watched it yet, I have a lot of friends in the community who don't even want to touch the show. Give it a shot. Give the first 2 episodes a shot. I promise you, the Monster Blood episode, which I think was episode 3 or 4, that one's going to kick you in the butt, just so you know. It's going to step on your toes, because it's boring. It's just a boring episode. It's a bad episode all about anxiety, like that's interesting at all. Or like that even makes a character at all. Not the way they do it. Not the way most people do it. That's going to be annoying. I'm just giving you a heads up from the get-go. But if you give it a shot, I think a big chunk of the show you'll like. I really do. Again, the stuff that would be worrisome, like even down to the relationship stuff, it's not as bad. I just find one big thing, going back to the Colleen Hoover thing, that's a big issue for me. All too often in newer movies, newer shows, newer books that I've read, all too often you have characters, like, they'll sit down after something happens, and then they all keep saying the same things over and over to each other to reaffirm information. Excuse me. They all keep repeating info of things that they all just saw, that we all knew about, to each other. And I'm like, why are you talking about this? You all already know what happened. And what it is, it's stupid audience mentality. It's they think you're all an idiot, so they have to keep saying it to all of us, again and again, to solidify to the grandmothers or grandparents watching, or to the toddlers watching, that, hey, this is what happened, this is what we know for sure. We got to make sure we talk about it again and again and again, and it's always on the way. It's the Colleen Hoover syndrome. They did that in It Ends With Us, the movie. Characters and writers, for God's sake, if you're out there writing a book, I don't care if it's a Goosebumps type of thing, a horror, deep extreme horror thing, a slasher book, I don't care what it is, for the love of God, if it's fantasy even, stop having your characters have something happen to them, and then it's not a scene where they're talking to somebody so that they can get some advice or some relief or just get it off their chest. Stop having characters that already experienced the same thing together sit there and talk over and over again and repeat the same info to each other for a whole 10-15 minutes. That is too often that I see that now. It's a great example of why most books back in the day were no longer than 200, 250 pages in the pulp era of books, because we didn't waste time on stuff like that the audience already knew. Think of all the money in time spent on those days of shooting those scenes for those conversations that everyone, including the cast, the script, the characters, the audience, already knew all of that. Stop doing that to fill out the episodes. You're wasting time. You're wasting time, and you're wasting my time especially. You know what I mean? But anyway, I don't have anything else to say. I think I got everything off my chest. I know I didn't talk as much about the plot, but again, I don't want to go too far into that for people who haven't seen the show. So check it out. On my recommendation, I would say, if it sounds interesting enough to you. If you happen to be a big David Schwimmer fan, maybe this is for you. He's in every episode, which is nice. If you like body horror, there's a lot of that in here. If you like kind of sci-fi teen horror, this is for you, especially if you like the YA stuff. This is solid YA. You know what I mean? Like if you compared it to the books and stuff. Not the Goosebumps books, but like the genre of YA books at like the bookstore. This has that kind of feeling, that kind of generic panic, I guess, generic concepts and situations. That's more of what this is like. It's not going to be for everybody, but it's way better than Season 1, for sure. Even if it's not good or great, it's really, really, really a big improvement over what Season 1 failed at in every possible way. So anyway, when it comes to Goosebumps The Vanishing, or Goosebumps Season 2, if you want to call it that, again, if I had to rate it, I'd give it a 3 out of 5 stars. I think it deserves that. I think it's fairly well made for what it is, and I think that the actors and actresses did an even better job here than in Season 1's characters because of how bad the writing was there. It seems like they have real humans working on this show this time, which is nice. I'm very happy with that. I'm happy with what I got, except for the finale not really landing. I would love to hear everything you all have to say down below. What do you think a Season 3 should do if it does get made? Do you think they should continue this story like I think they probably will? Do you think they'll just do a new story every season like an American Horror Story show? I'd love to hear everything you guys think about that. I still wish that we did an anthology season, like a whole season where every episode was its own adaptation. I think that's the way to go. I think it's really the only way to make people that are, you know, hardcore, die-hard fans like myself actually happy. But, you know, with what I got here, I'm okay if this is what we're getting. You know what I mean? As long as it's fine and it's subtle about things that it does, as long as we're doing that and trying to keep the horror being the main part of the story, even though it's not scary to me, this could be scarier to younger kids and teens and whatever, I guess. I think this is the way to go for if they're going to do the goals they want to do. You know what I mean? Not saying it's what I want, not saying what it's best for the books or the community or the fans or Stein himself. Not saying that. But what I am saying is that they're trying to do the goals they're doing about hitting a teen demographic, excuse me. This is what they needed to do, I think. It's a lot better than what Season 1 did, as I've said a million times now. So anyway, what do you think about Season 2, The Vanishing? I'd love to hear everything you have to say down below. Thank you all for watching, guys. God bless you all. Catch you later, and goodbye.